I'm actually very optimistic about everything, inclusive of our future state as a species and as a planet. But if you think about that whole divergence, that split, and then the impact of technology, just going like this, my question to the group is, how do we start bringing those two things back together? Because income inequality is probably the most pronounced, I think, factor of what we're seeing with this split. And I'm not without hope. I am aware of the exponential way that this is starting to diverge. And just what are folks' thoughts on how we start tying these two things together?
There's a part of me that wonders what the next generation is going to bring. Because I have heard it from, I have 3 daughters who are all in their 20s. And I've heard it from them, I've heard it from their friends. I think we're starting to see it, particularly after the housing market, where it almost seems like the next generation on the what's in it for me, even though they get talked about it, when they're actually looking for housing and everything else, they're not looking for how big a house, they're not trying to gather as much stuff. And I'm wondering if that will start turning it back, that it's no longer about that selfish, how much can I make, but more bigger picture. I don't know if it's unique what I'm hearing from them, some of their friends.
I think you should be, and I think we hear the same thing. When you see the 4 kids in our family, I would say that 3 out of 4 of them are just like that.
Just like
they're
that.
they're sitting around and they're going, how do I make a contribution?
Yeah.
How do I make a difference? Which is very different language than my generation, to be honest with you. I mean, I got out of the military, my first job was to make as much money as I possibly could make based on whatever limited scale I could make it at. And that was just honest. And I don't think I was 40 years old before I realized that there was more.
Yeah.
So,
but the younger generation now, I mean, I have kids in elementary school, middle school, and like that. I mean, we're teaching them so much more about the environment, about caring, you know, recycling, and I mean, the conversations
Are different.
Are totally
way different than when
Yes,
I
they
was
are.
in,
Yeah.
you know,
That's the good side.
in the grade school
Yep.
kind of thing. You know, and I agree with you. I came out, you know, expecting that you just go make as much money as you possibly can, and you know, let the other things kind of go aside. But I also think as a society, I mean, everybody used to strive. They always wanted their kids to do better than they did. I mean, I think that was kind of the thing. But then I think at one point where we got where the kids just expected that they would do better than the parents. It kind of, the drive wasn't there.
Right?
Right. Yeah, whatever that is.
My perspective may be, overly informed by my own personal experience, having grown up mostly in New York and moved to Maine 12 years ago. I feel like Maine is a real bubble in a good way. Well, in some ways it's a good way and in some ways it's not. I think my experience here, so many of the people I know have moved here in the past 10, 15, 20 years. And people come here because they can have a different kind of a lifestyle that has the kind of values that we're all talking about, where the kids are growing up not only being taught these things, but being taught about giving back. And that there's tremendous and appropriate pressure on the people who are on the higher scale of earning in our community, particularly like in law firms, to be giving back. I mean, all of those lawyers, they're all like involved on some board or there's huge pressure in those high earning to give financially and otherwise. And coming from New York, it's not like that. I mean, there are pockets, certainly, and I worked in nonprofits when I lived in New York too, so certainly I saw that, but I saw it much less than I see it here. It's much more common, and because Maine is so small and you can't go out to dinner or to the library or to the bank or basically anywhere in the state without seeing somebody that you know.
That is very true.
Pretty much.
There is a lot of social pressure to be a better person, which I think is fantastic. It's one of the many reasons I love Maine. It makes me a little cynical though, because I believe that our experience is insulated.
I think that's
It's why I'm here, but
I think about that all the time. I've been here for 11 years now, and there's some thing about the culture of Maine that is still present in what was the culture of America that I think we're losing.
Yes.
And hopefully we're getting it back based on what you said. I mean, so yeah, really well said.
I wish I had more evidence one way or another, because I kind of come from Brett Watson and I think we have the same parents. Which makes us.
Brett's going, wait, do I have an opinion on
You
this?
were the accent.
Well, the reason I say that is
I can
because
see it.
I think one of the things that Brett and I share is this kind of almost gut level competitive thing. And I want to go make a change tomorrow. And I think sometimes, you know, my biggest challenge is that I want to get out there and go, come on, world, pay attention, or I'll slap you around. And I think it's going to have to be a generational thing, Neil. I think we've got to rely on our kids on doing a better job. I mean, I think of Deb and her daughter, and I think of our kids, and I think of, there's great hope for me, at least I think, and that's where I think I see it, is that there are just, maybe the educational system's working better. I don't know. They didn't, I'm obviously not a great father.
I
have to pipe up, and you
It's
know it
not.
takes me a while.
We
Yeah.
need, whether you liked Reagan or not, he was perfect for the country when he came around. We had very high interest rates. He made the country feel good about themselves. It really ultimately comes from the top.
Yeah.
And right now, we need a Reagan type event in the U.S. We've got a lot.
Yeah.
The underpinnings of the U.S. are really strong.
Yeah.
They're very strong.
Well, that
will be-
spirit's still there.
The reason we have propane shortages is because we're exporting more than we've ever, and we don't have a balance.
Right, exactly.
And the other thing is we set up all of our terminals to import LNG, and now we're going to have to reverse the flow. So there's a lot of good things if we're managed well. But the U.S. we need someone to come in, and I don't care what party it is.
Leadership.
We need someone that's been there, done that can really stand up for what the opportunities are in America. And I can.
Unfortunately, Brett, most of these things come out of crisis. You know, you hate to see another
Well,
9/11.
maybe it's Putin running roughshod. Who knows? Something's going to trigger it at some point.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
But,
Or it doesn't, or which is even a worst case thought, right?
But to Brett's point, why is America different than a company? Doesn't America need a roadmap just like a company needs a roadmap and a strategy and a purpose
Vision.
and a
You
vision?
think so? Yeah.
You may never get there, but you're constantly trying to. And I think that's what we lost, that vision of who we are and what we're doing.
Yeah,
It's
so-
the why.
So you have people doing end arounds trying to create zero-sum games. That's the downside of capitalism. Is it just you have end arounds. In my industry, with dealing with EPA, you'd think all the wood stove manufacturers would be banding together and saying, hey, this was what works, what doesn't. But you have a couple of 2 or 3 wood stove manufacturers that are doing an end around trying to influence their air quality director on the West Coast, and all of a sudden you've got an industry that's divided amongst manufacturers. Same thing happens in Europe as far as their European Union coming in like the EPA did, and the manufacturers collaboratively work well with government to come up with a win-win. And it's really frustrating for me to see Europe work so well and us just battle and having government be really clueless on what they're trying to create. And fortunately, the network with Deb's husband has been just, all right, let's look at science and let's look at the facts.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. But we've had to spend a lot of money, time, and energy daily unwinding this thing. And that's really, to me, representative of not been there, done that at the very top of the U.S.
Yeah, I think it's crazy, Brett, how much time and money folks
Unbelievable.
have put into this. And I know that there was one public hearing that my husband was at.
Yeah.
And because he's an engineer, so he's talking science, but it's the emotion of people in the room just falling apart about wood particulate and the air we breathe. And he's going, okay, but, take us back to the science piece. And he does at some of these meetings, gets to the point where he says, I have kids too. I care about air quality. I just understand more of the science of it.
Yes.
Let's talk this through instead of this real political divisiveness. And he gets slammed a lot because he is a state employee, and people will be, well, you work for Paul LePage. And he says, I've been in state government for a long time. I work for whoever the governor is, but that doesn't mean we're the same person. Yeah.
Well, give us your thoughts from the Goliath.
I think two thoughts. One a thought, another a question. How do you keep it in front of you? And I think I've talked about this before. Early in my career, our chairman, we were having tough times. And he came in and basically we'd get these quarterly videos, and anytime you saw him, anytime he spoke, you knew what he was going to talk about. And so in terms of how do you keep these in front of you, it's repetition. And it was quality, performance, and diversity. And he would talk about those 3 things every time. And no matter what he had to talk about, like you said, at the stump speech, everything came back to those 3 things. And so literally that was the outline of his talk, whether it was the quarterly video, whether it was dinner with him, with the staff, whether it was a plant meeting, whatever it was. He had to be bored to tears with it, because he said the same thing over and over again for 7 years. But everybody knew. I mean, there was no question anywhere in the organization what those priorities were. So I think that to me was a really good example of how you keep things in front of you, is if the leader just plain repetition. And to your point, the stump speech, you have that, and you bring everything back to that. And so, I mean, for me, I put the frame and context there. Is anytime you have the opportunity to talk about anything, you try and frame it or put it in the context of either the strategy or the vision or the beliefs that you're trying to impart on the organization, or the direction you're trying to put the organization. Put it in that context. So that's sort of from that Goliath perspective. The other thing for me from the Goliath perspective is the question: how do you build these common beliefs, or do you? Do you, as you get to the value system of people, is that something that do you build that in your organization, or is that something you, through the selection process, you establish as having a common set of values? And I don't know the answer to that question.
I think, personally, if you asked me as an OD guy, I'd say yes. Because you asked 2 questions, and I'd say yes. I think you build it, and I also think you hire for it. And I think you can do both. You have to think about how to do them. But they got to be an overt effort. One of the things that Deb and I, a while back, went through a whole event around Brené Brown. And one of the things that Brené Brown does, she brings something different to everybody. She's really big on naming it. Put a damn name on it so you can talk about it. And sometimes I'm going, just name it, right? Name what it is, right? So name that you want a belief system. And this is the belief system you can hire for. And also give an employee an idea to go, this is what we really believe in. We're going to live with this. This is the way we're going to live our lives. This is what we'll be world famous for. And if you can't get on board, then start to make your plans. I mean, it's okay. Not everything is for everybody every time, right? But I think there's kind of the tone for me on this conversation has been a lot about where's the world going? What can we do to impact it? And so I think the Goliath thing, what's really scary, go back to finish up the conversation, when we had that talk in the room, and they said, will it stay the same? I'm going, I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah.
It could all fall apart.
Yeah.
They went,
Yeah.
I'm going, I'm sorry. I don't want to lie to you. I can't lie to you.
Right.
It could all fall apart, depending on who your next CEO is. They bring in somebody from they're bringing somebody from the Wild West, and they decide that the whole idea is crazy.
Yeah, but the best part of that conversation, Ralph, as you know, is there's no point in lying to these people. There were people in the room going, oh, you can't say that.
Don't talk to the kids like that.
Don't talk to the children like that. You're going to frighten them. Hello?
Somebody grabbed me later and they said,
Yeah.
oh, no, you're scaring the kids. I'm
Yeah.
going, excuse me, that's a reality check.
Yeah.
I'm really good at that kind of thing,
Really,
right?
the best part of it was that very authentic piece, which is, you know how this works, right? If everybody isn't playing their part, and if everyone doesn't believe in this could turn around in a hurry, because then everybody gets all self-protective, going, okay, here's the new CEO, what do I have to do to survive? Okay, what is the expectation of this person?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So we have control of the moment, I guess is what I would tell people. If you like the way leadership runs, support the hell out of it, please.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my threat to everybody. We'll support your leaders.
Yeah.
Second of all, if they're not the leaders you want, you don't see a change coming, go find something you love.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate to say that. That's,
But
it seems to be
true.
un-American these days, but I'm going to say it anyways, generally.
Yeah.
So it's one of those kind of things where you sit down and go, Brett and I used to have these talks. I said, nobody threw them in a hammerlock so they'd come to work for you, man. I think they filled out an application or a resume or something, right?
Yeah.
So they were here voluntarily, I believe, right? And when they signed on day one, they were all excited about all the good things they were going to do. What the hell happened? Right? They own it. They're the ones that bring home the paychecks. Right? Unhappy? Go find something you love.
I love you're saying you made a decision to walk in the door every day and come play.
Yeah, don't play. You're gonna be here all day, you might as well play hard, right? What's the difference? Anyways, didn't mean to off
I
talk.
must have missed some of that. Is there a succession planning exercise going on with your organization, Deb?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? This is something that's near and dear to my heart. Can you give any advice about what not to do with respect to succession planning and grooming that potential next successor for the president or CEO position?
You-
I know it's off topic, but you triggered something. that I'm
No,
curious about.
say it again, because I'm not sure I quite
I'm curious
understand.
as to
Need a seminar.
the gotchas of succession planning and subsequently grooming that next potential or potentials for the corner office.
Yeah, the only, I mean, you're right, it could be a week-long seminar, but I can tell you from our experience, the mistake that our organization made, number one, is to wait for a crisis to happen before you get slapped into the reality of having to do it,
Yeah.
because our CEO was diagnosed with lung cancer. And we're in a unique situation right now, which is causing some, there's always going to be competition, but you have to be careful about the conflict piece of it, and we haven't done that very well.
Okay. Just, is there any perception that there might be a CEO off going on internally? Is that,
Yeah.
okay.
There's
Are you
also,
in on
let me give you a little bit of the,
Yes.
I'll give you the overview from OD, because we do a fair amount of succession planning work with clients. Succession planning work says we'll have, if the good Lord willing and the creek don't rise in the next 5 years, we're going to have 2 or 3 really important positions that are going to open up, and we kind of rather hire from within. That's generally where the conversation starts. So then you sit back and you, with an executive team, you look at talent. You go, can you step back and squint a little bit? Do they look like they could grow into it? That kind of stuff, right? So you do the squint. Once they've decided that they think there's some raw material that they can work with, then they call somebody like Lorraine or myself and we go, let's build a process. And there's generally a process to it, just so you know. But there's an overt action. And I find out that, I'm going to tell you that I think that 80 to 90% of the companies in this country do not have a real succession plan. They have to put something down generally for the board. But I will tell you, the real idea of a succession plan, we only work with a couple of clients that I would consider really have one.
That's probably the biggest hole that we haven't addressed at Yodel. And you have a made-for seminar event with HR manager and senior manager, maybe, Krista and I, along with, or any, we would love to spend more time talking about that and listening to success stories and stories that don't work.
To me, there's so much jeopardy. I'm just going to say this, so much jeopardy in not doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guarantee you chaos if you don't have a succession plan. We've seen it 100 times. We could write books about the problems. You look at Hannaford Brothers, look at Unum, look at the falling apart and then put back together and taking really crappy tries at shitty management. I'm just doing the quick, right? I'm giving you the thumbnail, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
But you gotta, if they simply had taken the time to build it right, and then you gotta have a little bit of luck, people gotta live to the end of the string, right? Then I think you have something that you can live by. Think about the net effect for employees. Go way downstream, start with the entry-level people. The idea of having a real succession process inside an organization gives great hope to the average employee. They don't think they're going to be CEO. What they think is that the world is at least a place of hope for them.
Yeah.
Maybe they can succeed into a manager's job if that's what they want, or they can learn more, or they can do stuff. There's this wonderful feeling that happens inside of an organization when you have a real succession plan. We could write books about that. This is the stuff that happens. We see so many kind of residual effects from simply saying, here's the process, here's how it works, and then having something get started. You see the ripple effect through every employee in the organization. Every single one. They're all going, whoa. And they don't have big eyes about being CEO. They're just going, this feels great. I think the other part of it is if we could somehow know, Brett, that the man or the woman who is going to take your spot would share your values. Think of how we sleep at night if you're a Yodel employee. Because they love you. And they think that you get it. And to think that the next person might get it after you retire will make them go buy a new picnic table.
Absolutely.
That's right.
That's how it works, right? So that's the power of it.
Here's what I'm struggling with. I'm going to pick on Deb's organization, but it may be happening in mine. So, just take it with a grain of salt. I love the idea of self-selection internally, and if there are 2 perceived candidates, wonderful for everybody as long as it's played right. The fear is it becomes a CEO off, and alignment between functional areas, right? You get in line with your chief, and that's where you're right. And no organization needs any help in becoming less collaborative, less communicative, and that is my
Absolutely.
fear that keeps me awake at night, thinking about potentials.
Well, I would tell you that Deb, this is just my view, and I don't think I've ever shared this with Deb, they really don't have a succession planning process. They've created a
Right.
competition for the CEO
Right,
job.
right.
That's a very different process.
Process, yeah.
Right, a succession planning process is where you sit down and you go,
Right.
there are 6 candidates for 2 jobs, and now we put together a process by which they have to prove their ilk.
Okay, well, let me just say that it could be a strategy that a CEO off is a good idea, and that is succession planning. Let me just offer that.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm not saying it's
Yeah,
right.
it could be a
I'm saying it
strategy.
could be
No,
a
I agree.
strategy.
Yeah, no,
It's
totally.
yes,
I have my VP of Finance his name is Paul Harrelson, and he teaches some classes at York County Community College.
Yeah.
And just lean accounting and business strategy, and he shared with us an analysis of the succession from Steve Jobs from Apple. It's a great article. I'll send it to you, and then you can
Love
pass
it.
it out.
Love it.
But it really analyzes: does Apple, after Jobs, need a professional manager that takes care of, that recognizes where the strengths are in the organizations and lets them run? Keep the creativity, or do they need a visionary, a sort of wild creator like Jobs? And then they analyzed Tim Cook, and Tim Cook clearly
Who's
is
a
more
manager.
on the manager side. And it wasn't, is that bad or good? Little
Different style.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Right.
But one thing that they went deep into what Jobs would do, and he'd call it his top 100. And at any point in any time, these 100 people in the organization would know exactly what Steve Jobs was thinking. They'd all be talking the same language. They'd go off on retreats. They didn't have to be senior management. It was just his most influential top 100. And that was the top 100 that ran the company. So there was great hope that if Cook recognized the talent in the top 100 as a professional manager, then they'll be fine. So that's, and the jury's out. Cook's what,
Well,
his 3rd
it's
year?
an interesting
Yeah,
dynamic,
right.
because
He is
what happens is, most of the time, we realize that people can only see one level up and one level down. So what happens is you really don't have a real recognition of what real talent looks like,
Yeah.
okay? That's why it's really tricky, because your CEO, your next CEO could be assembling stoves today. But that takes a real squint.
Yeah.
Right? All we see is one level up and one level down.
Right.
So it's harder to do, particularly if you're Cook, because what he's doing is he's a professional manager. What's he looking for?
He's
Let's
looking
hope he's
for
got a big brain. Let's just say
Well,
that.
he wants to manage what's working well, and he
probably
better
is looking for
delegate
somebody
the
to do
creative
that.
side and find out where the creative side is, because that's not him.
Yeah. And does he recognize that in himself? Because he might think things are just fine. How many times have you seen that repeated?
Oh, absolutely.
Somebody,
Gets-
you know,
gets stale
you
quickly.
get a professional manager when you needed a professional leader. You put the professional manager in place. Sure enough, they die on their own cross, and you go hire another professional manager.
Or they bring Michael Dell back, but it's too late.
Yeah. So it takes real. This is a wisdom thing, I think. It's not a.
It's tough though.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
It is damn tough stuff. And so the succession plan, the reason it's not done very often, it's not because people are afraid of it, it's because they don't know how to do it. It's
Right.
just a knowledge piece. So when they call an organization like us and they say, we want to do a succession plan, that creates a conversation. It doesn't create a model. I mean, we don't roll out a model. We sit down and go, what do you really want? What are you really looking for? And you get the lay of the land.
And it needs to start at all levels.
It
You know,
does.
I mean, it needs to be a process for everyone.
There has to be a process in it. It's an interesting dynamic. Everybody's a little bit afraid of it. For whatever reason, people in the top levels of organization are afraid there will be bad choices.
Right.
You're going to choose. How could it be a bad choice? Right? At the end of the
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
you're going to choose.
What have I done?
Right? And it's good, but it's not going to be based on who knows Brett Watson. It's going to be based on a level of accomplishment. That's the only way you should do these things, right? And if you're looking for a leader, you're looking for leadership accomplishments. If you're looking for a manager, you're looking for a management accomplishment. If you're looking for both, then find balance.
Yeah.
But know what you're looking for and being able to find it. And we find out that there are a few, maybe it's what Laura was talking about, the state of Maine. We have people who go, I don't want to choose, I want a selection process where it's obvious to everybody what should happen. And again, then they'll choose, right? Because that's going to be on a CEO to go to their board and say, this is my choice based on performance, based on what they've showed me, based on, and they, by the way, weren't my first choice 2 years ago.
And one of the once in a while comments I get from my HR manager, Krista, is, I go to these HR conferences and I just feel like I'm a failure as an HR manager because we have no succession plan. So that's
Tell Krista to feel better.
But that it is really, between the CEO and the HR manager. The HR manager is really, hey, let's get this thing going. At least in my
How many succession policies have you seen in your lifetime? None. How about you?
One.
Yeah.
They're working.
Matt, go out and Google this one. Succession planning. 80 to 90% of companies who have boards have a succession plan. And none of them use them. I'm going, what the hell's that? They had to write something for the board is what they had to do. That's what it is.
Your point about the tough love speech to the kids or whatever, I've seen it, and I'm also now much in fear of it because, and I think I've said this before to our smaller group, but the reality of what happened at MBNA America, 28,000 people, largest independent credit card issuer, huge Fortune 500 company. The president made a personal decision, not exactly on the succession plan, but there were actually two people running the company, the president and the chairman of the board, who was Al Lerner. And when Al Lerner passed away, the president got his son to become the new chair of the board. His son could not stand MBNA. And one of the first things he did was force the president out of the company and then sold the company to another bank. Thus, Bank of America took over MBNA. It was poor. It was an emotional choice. It didn't have good business sense behind it, and ultimately was the demise of the company. The situation I'm in right now, Hodgson Yachts has been around for almost 200 years, in 2 years, 200 years, 5 generations of Hodgdons. Tim Hodgdon's getting close to retirement. The natural question on everybody's mind.
Is things going to continue like they are?
Well,
Who's the next one?
Son or daughter, niece, nephew, brother. What Hodgdon's running this next? It's been run by 5 generations of Hodgdons. And right now our understanding is neither the son nor daughter has interest. Do you force them? Do you end up with, what we saw? It's a huge issue.
We call it the ruthless rules of reality.
Yeah.
How's that? 3 R's. Ruthless rules of reality. Here's what it is. These are your jobs. Go take care of your job. Meaning, if you do your job every day, you become a better entity every day, you'll have a market value. You don't want to be at the mercy of something that can happen to you because some venture capitalist buys this organization up because somebody walked away with millions of dollars, and you're stuck with whatever crappy management style this new CEO brings in. Is it okay? I'm not the misery guy. If you're not miserable, if you're, you know what I mean? If you're miserable, go someplace else kind of thing. But people think about it as like, oh my God, Father Neil. I'm going, no. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. People like me are willing to fight and die for your right to choose. So choose what you do for a living, right? Stand up tall and straight, make yourself a better entity every day. How's that? Pretty good advice. And I think sometimes we go, well, you stick around and we'll take care of you. Oh, no. Come in, play hard, do the good work. If you're lucky enough to have an organization where you align with their core beliefs, good for you. Every day, celebrate, please. Go in and thank your bosses and make sure that they know that you know. And who knows what tomorrow will bring, right? I mean, that's just the truth, right? And that's where I can't lie. People sit back and go, well, is it going to be better with the next CEO? The only thing I promise you, it'll be different, right? Hopefully it'll be better.